Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. I am the dude with a voice for TV and a face for radio. And I just got hit. I got sprayed with a drive-by cuting. Look at all those Q posts. God dog, Q, I got to present these things. Slow down. How many is that, numbers guy? Yeah, all right, whatever. It's a bunch is what he's saying. All right, keep in mind, I always read through these once, and then I go to my analysis. If you want to skip to that analysis, please click on the timestamp below. Post 18:41, 51 minutes after the hour of 11 EST, EDT, if you're reading daylight time. Media consolidation, the illusion of choice. Media has never been more consolidated. 6 media giants now control a staggering 90% of what we read, watch, or listen to. And you can see those are GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. Q says fake news consolidation, in brackets, propaganda arm of the D Party. Define antitrust laws. Then we have an FTC link. The Sherman Act outlaws every contract, combination, or conspiracy in restraint of trade, and any monopolization, attempted monopolization, or conspiracy or combination to monopolize. And then we have another FTC link. The FTC's competition's mission is to enforce the rules of the competitive marketplace, the antitrust laws. These laws promote vigorous competition and protect consumers from anti-competitive mergers and business practices. Reconcile. Then we have a plus, Google, plus Facebook, plus Twitter. In brackets, change we can believe in, Q. Post 1842, 12 minutes after the hour of 12 EST. These people are stupid. Then we have another link. Never interfere with an enemy while he's in the process of destroying himself. Discovery. And we have another link here. Do you believe in coincidences? We have the source, Q. Post 1843, 15 minutes after the hour of 12. We have a Twitter link. Do you remember their names? We do. Do you really believe you are still safe? Protected? The world is watching, Q. Post 1844, adding on to this previous post, we get a Wikipedia link. BC set the stage in brackets. In separate brackets, plan. Could a new Telecommunications Act be on the way? Q. Post 1845, we get a picture of a Q400. Autists catch the message? Think missile. Do you believe in coincidences? Q. And this was the same version of the prop plane that went down the other day. Adding on to that, post 1846, 7 minutes after the hour of 2, we get this New York Times link. Boom, 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 boom. Next week in brackets, Q. Post 1847, 21 minutes after the hour of 2 p.m. How do you prevent the public release of incriminating acts that would forever strip their power away? How do you bind the hands of POTUS? Two-pronged, I'm guessing that's situation, SITU. Test strength of midterms through private analysis, win-loss ratio. Analysis below key metric without chance for recovery. Start a war. Think missiles accidentally fired. Against who? Relationships are very important. The sharing of information is very important. Q. Post 1848, 52 minutes after the hour of 2 p.m., we get Iron Eagle, Q. Post 1849, 33 minutes after the hour of 3 p.m., welcome to the swamp. Example 1, Google, State Department, HRC in brackets, Eric Schmidt, Lisa Shields. Then we have a link, Bill Paxson, Akin Gump Strauss Hauer and Feld LLP. And we have a Wikipedia link, John Dowd, a Business Insider link, Melissa Lorenza, and a CNN link, Q. Post 1850, 24 minutes after the hour, 4 p.m., we have a Fox News link, normal, not updated in brackets, not seeking re-election, Senate in brackets, Bob Corker, Republican, Jeff Flake, Orrin Hatch, no name, all Republicans, departure soon in brackets. And we have a House in brackets, Bill Schuster, Bob Goodlatte, Carol Shea Porter, Charles W. Dent, Darrell Issa, Dave Reicher, David Trott, Dennis Ross, Edward Royce, Elizabeth Esty, Frank Lobiondo, Gene Green, Greg Harper, Ileana Ross-Lehtinen, Jeb Henseling, Jim Bridenstine, Joe Barton, John Delaney, John J. Duncan Jr., Lamar Smith, Luis V. Gutierrez, Lynn Jenkins, Nikki Songas, Paul Ryan, Rick Nolan, Robert Brady, Rodney Frelinghuysen, Ruben J. Keohane, Ryan Costello, Sam Johnson, Sandy Levine, Ted Poe, Thomas Rooney, Trey Gowdy, all Republicans. Then we have another resignation list here in brackets. Al Franken, Democrat, Blank Farenthold, Jason Chaffetz, John Conyers, Louis Slaughter, Patrick Meehan, Patrick J. Tiberi, Tad Cochran, Tim Murphy, Trent Franks, Javier Becerra, Normal, and these are a mixture of Democrats and Republicans. Q says, signs off as Q. Post 1851, 54 minutes after the hour of 4 p.m., we get this right here, this graphic regarding Bill Maher. We have an IMDb Pro link and some links to a couple production companies regarding Bill Maher. Q says, sometimes the truth is right in front of you. And then we have a Breitbart link. These people are sick. You people are a disease. We the people are the cure. Q. Post 1852, 10 minutes after the hour of 6 p.m. We have this from an Anon, links us to a Bill Maher tweet. OMG, what did Michelle Bachmann do to her hair? I thought I stumbled on an ad for Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And you can see the tweet right there. Anon says, haha, that's why I added it in there. The hypocrisy is unreal. Q gives us a Twitter link. Q. And post 1853, 23 minutes after the hour of 7 p.m., we have another Twitter link. Do you believe in coincidences? Truth to power. Q. Okay, let's take you back to the beginning. Post 1841. We're looking at this graphic right here, the illusion of choice. Media has never been more consolidated. 6 media giants now control a staggering 90% of what we read, watch, or listen to. And it's probably even bigger than that. This shows you back in 1983, 50 companies owned 90% of the media. And in 2011, that same 90% is controlled by 6. And these are the 6: GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. And of course, they have all their subsidiaries down below. Massive, massive companies that seem almost too big to fail. Q says fake news, consolidation, propaganda arm of the D party. Yeah, well, we already know that very well. Q then goes on to say define antitrust laws, and then takes us to this site here. And here are your antitrust laws. Now, we're not going to go through all of this, but I just want to break down the 3 core federal antitrust laws. The first is the Sherman Act. Outlaws every contract, combination, or conspiracy in restraint of trade and any monopolization, attempted monopolization, or conspiracy or combination to monopolize. Okay, so that's the first one. And then there is the Federal Trade Commission Act. Bans unfair methods of competition and unfair or deceptive acts or practices. The Supreme Court has said that all violations of the Sherman Act also violate the FTC Act. Thus, although the FTC does not technically enforce the Sherman Act, it can bring cases under the FTC Act against the same kinds of activities that violate the Sherman Act, all right? And then there is the third one, which is the Clayton Act. Addresses specific practices that the Sherman Act does not clearly prohibit, such as mergers and interlocking directorates. That is, the same person making business decisions for competing companies. Okay, so this keeps basically companies from, well, it should, in theory, keep companies from merging to create these massive monopolies. And of course, we know that a lot of these have never really been enforced. Now, although they say this, the Sherman Act is the one that's enforced the least, it also says here the penalties for violating the Sherman Act can be severe. And it basically talks about, it has to do with the money value. So anything over 100 million as far as illegal acts lost by victims from the crime, resulting in over 100 million, would result for basically twice the amount the conspirators gained from the illegal acts. So if they could go getting up to 10 years of prison, I guess that would be 10 to 20 years of prison. But it looks like there could be prison time in violation of those acts. It's just that they don't generally prosecute under the Sherman Act. They basically use this Federal Trade Commission Act. Okay, so Q goes on to quote the Sherman Act. The Sherman Act outlaws every contract, combination, or conspiracy in restraint of trade and any monopolization, attempted monopolization, or conspiracy or combination to monopolize. Well, these guys have all the monopolies, and they put them under these subsidiaries, basically to make it look like they don't, but they essentially do. Now, Q goes on to give us this link right here, which is basically just a guide to antitrust laws. Says free and open markets are the foundation of a vibrant economy. Aggressive competition among sellers in an open marketplace gives consumers, both individuals and businesses, the benefits of lower prices, higher quality products and services, more choices, and greater innovation. Well, that's not exactly what we've been getting, especially in regards to our social media. And this is where Q goes on to say here, the FTC's competition mission is to enforce the rules of the competitive marketplace and the antitrust laws. These laws promote vigorous competition and protect consumers from anti-competitive mergers and business practices. Reconcile. And then we got a plus Google, plus Facebook, and plus Twitter, who have been really the big guilty monopolies, right? Now, there's a big argument kind of on social media, proponents of the shadow bans and things like that from the far left have been, well, that these are private companies and they have the right to basically ban whoever they want. And I suppose that there would be an element of truth to that, except for the fact that these companies have become these monopolies, and that sort of takes those rules away and becomes a public service at a certain point. So that is essentially what we're looking at here, and I can't help but think that these massive conglomerates could be looking at antitrust law violations. Let's hope so, because hopefully those would be some stiff penalties. Now, in regards to the pluses here, I know some people have thought that this might be in relation to George Soros, as Q has used plus in relation to George Soros. I don't think that's necessarily the case in this case. Now, George Soros does obviously have stake in a lot of things. I want to take you to this from here. George Soros, this was off of from January 26th. George Soros slams Google. Facebook says they're a menace to society. And we're not going to go through this whole thing here, but I just want to note here, though Soros is no longer involved in the day-to-day operations of his family fund, Soros Fund Management, the asset manager, did own shares of Facebook and Google parent Alphabet as of September 30th, according to SEC filings reviewed by Fox News. Soros Fund Management, which has approximately $18 billion in assets under management, also owns positions in many companies, including Comcast, Microsoft, and Amazon, often a target of Trump. Okay, so he came out speaking against these social media companies, but he still does have holdings in there. So you could be right about the Soros connection right there. I don't think that's necessarily what Q might be referring to. I could be wrong. I tend to think that maybe Q is just adding these to the list of these companies that may be looking at some antitrust law violations, and hopefully that will result in some stiff penalties. And honestly, it can't come fast enough. It just gets uglier and uglier on these platforms. Q says change we can believe in. So I'm hoping that means that we're going to be looking at some new laws or addendums to the old laws, and we'll see how that plays out. Let's move on. Post 1842, Q says, these people are stupid, and then gives us this link right here. Now, this link takes us to a few different hyperlinks. This one in particular is the one I want to show you first. This you can see here is the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. This is the DNC as the plaintiff versus the Russian Federation, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation. And then you can see this is addressed to WikiLeaks. Within a lawsuit has been filed against you within 60 days after service of this summons on you, not counting the day you received it. You must serve on the plaintiff an answer to the attached complaint or a motion under Rule 12 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. The answer or motion must be served on the plaintiff or plaintiff's attorney, whose name and addresses are, and then you have these names right here, Joseph M. Sellers. So this was filed back in April, and you got the DNC suing the whole Russian Federation. And here's another one. This is a 66-page document. Let me read you all the plaintiffs here. Of course, we already have the Russian Federation, GRU operative using pseudonym Guccifer 2.0, Aras Iskanerovich Agalarov, is that correct? Emin Aras Agalarov, Joseph Mifsud, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, Donald J. Trump for President Incorporated. Not Donald Trump, Donald J. Trump for President Incorporated. Donald J. Trump Jr., Paul Manafort Jr., Roger Stone Jr., Jared C. Kushner, George Papadopoulos, Richard Gates, and John Doe's 1 through 10. Again, this was filed back in April. Okay, so I don't know if they're going to try and pick some speed up on this. Now, here are all the different complaints: computer fraud, RICO charges, wiretap act, stored communications. And a lot of these, let's face it, Paul Manafort's on trial. We're going to see exactly how dirty he is. Let me blow that up for you. This is finally working. By the way, thanks for you guys who were suggesting this. I knew this was here. It was just not clicking until I reset my computer, and now it's clicking. All right. Roger Stone, I don't know. And I'm not sure what I think about Roger Stone yet. Now, Jared Kushner, I'm not going to lie to you. He flat out creeps me out. But that's another video. So please don't get started on the comment section below. He needs his own video. And then, of course, George Papadopoulos, Richard Gates, who already copped a plea deal. And a lot of this really goes through these John Does 1 through 10. So this is a big, like I said, this is a soup sandwich, all right? This is a big, fat mess. And all this is stalling. It's been around since April. If it were going to gain any steam, I would assume it would have done that already. But I can't help but think they're going to try and throw this out again and use this as talking points on the news to try and drum something up. After all, everything else is falling apart. Now, there might be some stuff in here, and a couple of these guys look like they are guilty of a few things. But good luck going after the whole Russian Federation. I'd like to see how that works. Q says, never interfere with an enemy while he's in the process of destroying himself. Discovery. And then it takes us to this Hill link right here. WikiLeaks says Senate panel requested Assange testimony for Russia probe. WikiLeaks is claiming that the Senate Intelligence Committee has asked its founder, Julian Assange, to testify as part of the panel's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. The organization posted a letter on its Twitter account dated August 1st, and if you follow me on Twitter, you will have seen that purports to come from committee leaders Senators Richard Burr and Mark Warner, requesting that he make himself available for a closed-door interview with bipartisan committee staff at a mutually agreeable time and location. Okay, so what I'm essentially getting out of all of this is that it looks like if they can't get us to actually stop going after the sources that we need, which is essentially all located on the server, then they're going to try and go after the source himself, which is obviously Julian Assange. Now they're suing, looks like WikiLeaks. And WikiLeaks, we all know, has probably long been comped ever since Julian Assange essentially left. It just doesn't seem the same. The Twitter page seems really strange, and they're kind of up and down. It's really hard to tell what side they're on, which makes me think they must be comped already. So could they be trying to send a quote-unquote representative of WikiLeaks to go speak in lieu of Julian Assange? Or I tend to think that it might be possible that they're trying to simply draw Julian Assange out so that they can arrest him in transit. That would make more sense. Now, I also tend to believe that Julian Assange is already likely under lock and key. I'm not so sure he's still at the embassy. I think he could be somewhere else in a safe spot. Now, I don't know that, and so I don't want to propagate that anymore, but I tend to think that the way they're going after this like this is a desperation move, and all they're going to really trying to do is draw him out so that they can arrest him for other charges that were basically not real charges either. Q says, do you believe in coincidences? We have the source. Well, what is the source? The source, we've been told before, is either the server, or I should say servers, and or Julian Assange. Either way, we have the source. So this should be fun to watch how this all goes down. Q says never interfere with an enemy while he's in the process of destroying himself. I believe that was Napoleon who originally said that, but Q has said that a few times before, and that's exactly what they're doing. So I can't help but think that this is going to be stalling for the midterms, but at the end of the day, they're probably going to end up dropping this, because once they figure out exactly where this whole Paul Manafort situation goes, and it leads right up to Christopher Steele, I think they'll change their tune. Let's move on. Post 1843, Q takes us to this Twitter link and says, do you remember their names? And this goes to Bill Maher. Now, I'm just going to play you the opening line here, and that's about it. It's about a 7-minute video.
And finally, new rule: if Trump supporters don't want us to call them stupid, they have to stop coming up with things like Q. Oh, you heard? Yeah, it was just a few months ago in this space that I was talking about how Republicans are now the conspiracy party, and that there is literally nothing so ridiculous they won't swallow. Birth certificate, chemtrails, Jade Helm, lizard people. And now we have Q.
All right, well, you get the idea. And you can read here. It says, I, Q, need your help to make America great again. Keep posting your memes. We will, thanks. Keep believing everything Trump tells you. Well, okay. And above all, on Tuesday, November 6th, stay at home. See, that's the big part you're going to miss, Bill. That's the big part that you're missing about this whole thing. We won't be staying at home at November 6th, and I think that's really why you're getting so scared. Q says, do you remember their names? We do. Whose names? Whose names? Well, we're going to talk about Bill Maher in a little bit. We'll let him clown us for now. Do you really believe you are still safe? Protected? The world is watching. Q. Sounds like Q is not necessarily talking about us. But don't worry about Bill Maher's little jab at us. We'll get to him later. Let's move on. Post 1844. Q adds on down here with a couple links and says, BC being Bill Clinton set the stage in brackets. Plan. Could a new Telecommunications Act be on the way? Well, the first is to a Wikipedia link. Telecommunications Act of 1996 was the first significant overhaul of telecommunications law in more than 60 years, amending the Communications Act of 1934. The act, signed by President Bill Clinton, represented a major change in American telecommunication law since it was the first time that the internet was included in broadcasting and spectrum allotment. One of the most controversial titles was Title III, Cable Services, which allowed for media cross-ownership. According to the Federal Communications Commission, the goal of the law was to let anyone enter any communications business, to let any communications business compete in any market against any other. The legislation's primary goal was deregulation of the converging broadcasting and telecommunications markets. However, the law's regulatory policies have been questioned, including the effects of dualistic re-regulation of the communications market. Okay, basically what it allowed to do is it allowed bigger companies to buy up smaller companies, and that was the big part. Now, outwardly it said that anybody could compete, but the fact of the matter is that it was hardly true because all these different companies were basically just cross-merging, which allows for more monopolies. I remember this very particularly as a musician dealing with radio stations as they got gobbled up by all the bigger conglomerates, and it changed the music industry. I remember that, and I'm sure you guys have your own stories about how this all worked, but that was pretty common knowledge. And then the next one is just to the FCC, which basically talks about the act itself as well. Now, Q says, could a Telecommunications Act be on the way? Well, I hope so. I would hope that it starts out with some sort of Internet Bill of Rights. It seems that a lot of people can kind of agree on that would be a great place to start. And I think, I'm not exactly sure if you would necessarily abolish this act or amend the act. I'm not exactly sure what form that will come in, if it's going to come in a new law altogether. But Q is implying a new Telecommunications Act could be on the way, and it's definitely about time. 1996 was a long time ago, and a lot of things have changed, and we've seen now that this act essentially led to even more of this kind of consolidation. Remember, this was taken back in 2011, and even that's rather old. So you can imagine how much more it's grown since then. It's absolutely monstrous, and that's why the media has such a stranglehold on basically the global community. Post 1845, Q posts this picture of a Horizon Q400 twin prop plane and says, artists catch the message, think missile. Do you believe in coincidences? Q. And let me take you to the next post first, and then we'll talk about this. In 1846, Q adds on to it with a New York Times link and a boom, 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 boom. Next week in brackets, Q. So let's go to the New York Times article. And that's this right here. Many of you, if you've watched my video from last night, or probably a lot of you already know this story. Stolen plane crashes after airline employee takes off from Seattle airport. An airline employee took off in a stolen plane in Seattle Tacoma International Airport on Friday night in an episode that frustrated stranded travelers, riveted witnesses, and ended with the plane crashing about 30 miles from the airport, the authorities said. The man, a 29-year-old who acted alone, was thought to be suicidal, said officials in Pierce County, where the plane crashed. No one else was believed to be on the 76-seat plane or injured on the ground. An airline employee conducted an unauthorized takeoff without passengers at SeaTac, the airport said in a tweet. Aircraft has crashed in South Puget Sound. Normal operations at SeaTac Airport have resumed. Alaska Airlines said in a statement that it believed that the person who took the plane was a ground service agent employed by Horizon Air, a subsidiary. The takeoff occurred around 8 p.m. and involved a turboprop, a Q400, flying for Horizon. The flight appeared to last just under an hour. Now let me take you a little bit further down here. The stolen plane crashed on Ketron Island southwest of the airport, and a local television station showed a wooded area in flames that it called a debris field. Sheriff Paul Pastor of Pierce County told the Associated Press that the man flying the plane did something foolish and may well have paid with his life. The county sheriff's office said in a tweet, "We know who he is. No others involved." It added that it was not a terrorist episode and that 2 F-15 fighter jets had responded within minutes of the theft. Sheriff Pastor told the Seattle Times that the flight was a joyride gone terribly wrong, and videos recorded by onlookers on the ground show the plane diving, looping, and rolling over Puget Sound at sunset. On Saturday morning, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, said in a statement that President Trump was monitoring the situation. Federal authorities are assisting with the ongoing investigation, which is being led by local authorities, the statement said. We commend the interagency response effort for their swift action and protection of public safety. Okay, so this is a weird story. And the National Guard had to send out jets for this employee that got on a plane and flew a very complex maneuver and somehow crashed in a nearby island. Seems all very strange to me. Now, I reported yesterday about this Jimmy Thompson on Twitter, journalist in Canada's North, found in Vice, CBC, Globe, Star, etc. He had logged all these audio recordings rather quickly too. Maybe it seemed a little strange to me. Maybe it's not, but it seemed a little strange to me. But all these different recordings about the pilot. And the pilot didn't seem very distressed at all. You can go over here and look at it. It's at JWS Thompson. And, like I said, this just doesn't add up. You've got this guy who isn't really a trained pilot pulling off some pretty complex maneuvers on this stolen plane. They scramble some jets out, and this guy, whether or not he crashed or whether or not he shot down remains to be seen. But he definitely went down over this island, and now we're not exactly sure what happened. Now check this out. Homeboy's name was Richard B. Russell, a ground service agent at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. And this is him right there. Well, that's the same name as the USS Richard B. Russell, which was an old sub. Now, this sub is no longer in use. It was decommissioned in 1994. But what I found interesting about this, if you look at the bottom here, if you're able to see that, it said scrapping via ship and submarine recycling program began 1st of October 2001. That would have been just weeks after 9/11, right? And then it says it was completed on the 3rd of January 2003. So if we have any Navy guys who have ever decommed ships, if they know anything about this, I would love to know more about that. But is it possible that this supposed plane hijacker might have been a distraction for a submarine in the water? And maybe that's what Q was trying to get us to think. Remember, Q said think missile, and we had a missile fired from a submarine back in June. Now, having said that, I doubt it's this Richard B. Russell. Now, it very well could have been if it was scrapped around 9/11. Who knows what the deep state could have done with it? After all, we had trillions of dollars missing, so I wouldn't be surprised if a sub had gone missing either. And we know that the deep state is likely operating equipment as well, too. Now, having said that, I'm not so sure necessarily. I mean, you got to think about the logistics of a submarine crew. Some of these submarine crews can be 100 people or more. It takes a lot of people to operate a submarine. I don't think it's just as simple as a remote control. Maybe it is, and I don't know these days, but I'm just tending to doubt it. Also, this is an older sub, so I don't imagine this would have been the one that was involved unless it's been retrofitted or something like that. And that, I think, starts to kind of get off into the weeds, if you ask me. But it very well could have been pointing out the fact that Q was relating this to a sub. After all, this was a Q400, and there were a lot of people saying that the flight path that he made was also a Q. Now, I don't know about that. If you look at the picture right there, you can decide for yourself. I'm not sure how accurate that is. Very well could have been. But could this have been a distraction for something that may have been in the water? Just a thought. And if you look here, the motto of this ship is they saved the best for last. And in relation to the February 10th post from Q, where Q is talking about wizards and warlocks, save the best for last. It says 2 highly classified clown ops exposed. So could those maybe be missile launches? And then down here, March 10th, Q is responding to an Anon that says, what about Awan, meaning Imran Awan? Is Israel involved? And Q says, we're saving Israel for last. Very specific reason, not mentioned a single time, Q. And of course, that's the motto right here of the USS Richard B. Russell. So I'm not really sure. Let me know what you think, but I think these are some odd connections about this Mr. Russell, who just happened to be Richard B. Russell, and it's the exact same name as this particular submarine that has the motto, they saved the best for last. You let me know what you think down below. Now, this lone wolf supposedly suicidal, random airline worker that hijacked a plane and was able to fly it like a pro, flipped around, made kind of a Q-shaped motion, and ended up crashing at Carin Island, Washington. It's an island in a census-designated place in Pierce County, Washington, United States. The island has a population of 24 persons according to the 2000 census, but if you look over here, it's listed as 17 people. The entire island was bought by an entrepreneur in 1946 with plans to build 200 homes, but this attempt was abandoned due to the cost of a sewer system. Now let me take you over here. Carin is accessible only by ferry. The Steilacoom-Anderson Island Carin Island Run is the only one operated by Pierce County. The ferry service to Carin is available 4 times per day. The ferry runs between 5:45 a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. Monday through Thursday and to 10:30 p.m. on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Anon posted this on 8chan. Guys, this plane crash, man. I'm in Western Washington. Have been for years. I am 9 miles from this Carin Island. I never knew it was there. Only one ferry goes there once a day. Only 20 people live there. It appears to have an airport and some bunkers from the water side. Anyway, my house is by backside closest port. We got clowns, boys, lots of them, plus sheriffs from a bunch of municipalities out here. I did a little digging on this island. There is effery afoot. I think we have an Epstein version 2, and I found one of the residents that lives there, Pham and Ohar. Like Bruce, it was named and discovered by Charles Wilkes. This place is super hidden, and that plane targeted it. Clowns all over, Fox as well. This base is a stone's throw to Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, the DuPonts, Fort Lewis Army Base, McChord Air Force Base, and 7 miles as the crows fly to Bangor Submarine Base. Okay, well, I'm not exactly sure about all the homes. I know Bill Gates does have a Washington home. Now, as far as the ferry goes, we saw that on Wikipedia that there was more than just one ferry there. But the other stuff looks to be pretty close. I'm over here on the Googly map, and if you can see this red dot here, that's where Carin Island is. And at the top of your screen is Whidbey Island, not too far away. That was where our reported missile firing had happened back in June. And then right in the middle somewhere is SeaTac. And I'll try and zoom in a little bit here. My computer's working really, really slow. But Carin Island doesn't seem to have a whole lot on there. You can see that sort of at the top of the island where the ferry is, there's a few houses there, and then towards the center of the island there's one house that seems to be smack dab in the middle of all this forest. There's another house over here too, so a couple things scattered, but not a whole lot going on, but lots of forest here on Carin Island. So could this have been a deep state false flag with the intent on blaming it on Q followers that turned out to be a crisis averted? Or could this have been something in the water that we needed to give attention to? And in order not to excite the public, we needed an event to allow us to scramble a few jets. And the Q400 was simply a signal to us. Not really sure, but Q says, autists catch the message, think missile. Well, we know there's a message somewhere. We're not exactly what it is. Are they directing us towards that island? After all, we never really saw too much plane wreckage. We just saw that it landed over on the island. Now, there was another story regarding missiles over here on Zero Hedge. Serious incident unfolds as NATO jet accidentally launches secret missile near Russian border. Estonia's defense minister has halted a NATO war exercise in Estonia pending an investigation after a fighter jet deployed in northeast Europe accidentally fired a secret missile during training. Authorities are now searching for the rocket, which was shot over the Baltic country's airspace by a Spanish fighter jet this week near the Russian border. How about that? So we had another air missile going over there. Well, either way, it looks like some war games are being played. Q says, do you believe in coincidences? Not so much. Look, these are two islands very close within each other. Q is saying missile. I can't help but think he's probably referring back to the missile incident back in June. This could have been very well been a response or another attempt. But I don't think there's any coincidence that this is a Q400. I don't think it's a coincidence that it's right next to Whidbey Island. I don't think that it's a coincidence that this man was just happened to be named after a very famous U.S. submarine. Over here, Q says boom, 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 boom next week. So it looks like we've got 4 booms coming next week. And maybe this event here was either attempted as a false flag to distract from those booms or to prevent those booms from happening. You tell me down below. Let's move on. Post 1847. How do you prevent the public release of incriminating acts that would forever strip their power away? Well, I guess the people that want to release those incriminating acts would have to go away, right? And that's what they've been trying to do, to get those people to go away. How do you bind the hands of POTUS? Well, you got to put him in a situation where he can't do anything about it. Two-pronged. And now I first thought that could just be situation, and maybe that's the first reference. I also wondered if it was referring to small integrated transmitter unit. I think Q might be using a double meaning right there. Test strength of midterms through private analysis, win-loss ratio. Well, when they did that, they found an analysis that was below key metric without chance for recovery. Yeah, they know that it doesn't matter. They're going to lose midterms if it goes the normal way it's supposed to go. So what's the other way to bind the hands of POTUS? Start a war. Think missiles accidentally fired, and we just talked about that. These missiles here were fired from NATO jets on the border of Russia. We don't want to have any problems with Russia right now, especially since the deep state's banging the war drums of Russia, and we're trying to show that Russia is not necessarily our enemy. Against who? Well, we also had a missile that was supposedly fired at us by Whidbey Island back in June. So it looks to me like they're trying both sides, testing both sides, and they've missed both times. Relationships are very important. Yes, they are indeed. We need Russia. We don't necessarily need to be friends with Russia, but we most certainly don't need a war with Russia. The sharing of information is very important. Yeah, POTUS has been really, really clear about wanting to be clear with Russia and being able to actually meet with these people. And we've seen what it did for North Korea, and now we're seeing what it could possibly do with Russia as well. And we don't want to interrupt that. Now, the deep state, since they're not going to be able to probably win midterms, their only other chance is to try and start a war. And it looks like they're going full bore for it. Let's move on. Next post, 1848. Q says, Iron Eagle. Well, there's a few different theories about Iron Eagle that a lot of Anons have. And of course, one of them is in the reference to the movie Iron Eagle, in where the young Air Force boy goes to rescue his Air Force father, and he grabs his buddy, Louis Gossett Jr., with the sweet bitch and mustache, and they steal a couple fighter jets and get from California out to the Mediterranean. Only one problem. How do you commandeer a couple of fighter jets and get them out to the Mediterranean? Well, we had a couple of fighter jets let loose on this plane just yesterday. So I'm not exactly sure if that could be the reference. Now, there's a lot of people that think this may have to do with the Fed in regards to dealing with cryptocurrencies. I'm not so sure that's the reference that Q is talking about, but I want to take you to this, and thanks to an Anon who sent me this. I've heard of this operation before, but there's something interesting here. This is from the Emergency Services and Public Protection. Local, state, and federal law enforcement introduced Operation Iron Eagle. And this is from back in 2011. Since the terror attacks on September 11, 2001, the United States has continued to maintain a high level of awareness and readiness concerning any possible terrorist activity in the continental United States. The proximity of Connecticut in relation to other major cities such as New York City, Boston, the greater tri-state region, as well as our state's infrastructure causes us to remain vigilant in Connecticut. Okay, so it's talking about Connecticut. Let me bring you down here. Operation Iron Eagle coincides with the 10-year anniversary of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks in the U.S. This operation is designed to increase our capability to deter, detect, and interdict terrorists and related incidents throughout the state through high-profile visibility patrols with these specialty troopers. There has been no specific threat to Connecticut, but these patrols will be conducted by deploying specially trained troopers utilizing specialty equipment, EOD, K-9 teams, and federal and local law enforcement partners to numerous venues on a daily basis. Okay, you get the idea. And their little catchphrase down here is, if you see something, say something, to help enhance our security and safety in Connecticut. So it remains to be seen what exactly Iron Eagle is. You can let me know what you think it is down below. Let's go ahead and move on to 1849. Q says, welcome to the swamp. Example 1, Google, State Department, Hillary Rodham Clinton, Eric Schmidt, Lisa Shields. And then it takes us to this link right here. This is the Council on Foreign Relations Board of Directors, where you can find some of your favorite deep state knuckleheads. And I'm just going to scroll down here. This is Timothy Geithner, Jan Napolitano, Fareed Zakaria. I want to take you down here to almost the bottom here. Here we go. Lisa Shields, Vice President, Global Communications and Media Relations. And Q is saying that that is our direct connection right there to Eric Schmidt as well as HRC. Now let's go over to this Politico article where we're talking about Susan Molinari to head Google's D.C. office. Former Congresswoman Susan Molinari was named head of Google's Washington office on Thursday, increasing the tech giant's government firepower at a time of rising scrutiny from lawmakers and regulators on high-stakes issues that include privacy and antitrust. Molinari, a well-liked and well-connected inside player, will begin in mid-March as Google's Vice President of Public Policy and Government Relations for the Americas. Okay, so I want to show you just a couple things here. Her mission, according to a Google official, is to help lawmakers and regulators understand Google's business. Why do we need lawmakers and regulators to understand Google's business so well? And then one more thing I want to point out here. Molinari, 53, is a member of one of the Capitol's best-known political families. She succeeded her father, Representative Guy Molinari, in Congress and is married to another former House Republican, William Paxson. Paxson, a former chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee, is a senior advisor at the law firm Akin, Gump, Strauss, Hauer, and Feld. And that is the next link that Q gives us here. Headquartered in Washington, D.C., is an American international law firm and the most profitable lobbying firm in the United States. With more than 900 attorneys, the firm has offices in Dallas, Washington, D.C., San Antonio, Houston, Irvine, Fort Worth, New York, Moscow, Philadelphia, London, Los Angeles, Longview, San Francisco, Beijing, Hong Kong, Singapore, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Frankfurt, and Geneva. Sounds like they're a pretty big deal. This Akin, Gump, Strauss, Hauer, and Feld, LLP. And then Q brings us to John Dowd. Well, this John Dowd left Trump's legal team back in late March. Said he hoped the Russia investigation Mueller is leading would soon end earlier this month. Well, that didn't quite happen. Now, I just want to say this about him right here. New reports show that during his time as Trump's lawyer, Dowd discussed potential pardons for two people who have been indicted in Mueller's probe: former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort and former White House National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. But since Dowd's resignation, Trump has had a hard time finding lawyers to replace him, and when asked about the situation, Dowd chose to bow out of the discussion. "I have exited this stage," he said. He told the Wall Street Journal that his time commenting on issues of national importance will be on hold for a while. Okay, so we've got this guy that Q's pointing us out to, and then Q points us out to this Melissa Lorenza. And here's an article that we get. Special counsel reveals potential witnesses in Manafort trial. This is from May 2018. The special counsel's office for the first time Wednesday revealed some of the witnesses it may put on the stand against former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, as prosecutors and Manafort's team argued several legal questions in advance of his trial in this September. The prosecutor's office said they intend to call to testify Melissa Lorenza, a private attorney who helped Manafort and his longtime deputy Rick Gates file allegedly misleading foreign lobbying registrations with the Justice Department, as well as individuals from companies Manafort worked with. Okay, so it looks like these could be one of the people that we were talking about last week that were going to get called to testify. And interestingly enough, this Melissa Lorenza was partner of this Akin, Gump, Strauss, Hauer, and Feld LLP. So Q is pointing out that there is still a lot of swamp to be drained because so many of these people are married in, or they're grandfathered in, or however it works. But it is clearly not an easy thing to do, and hence that's why it's been so difficult and taken such a long time to be able to do. And hopefully we can get a lot of this done by midterms. Let's move on to the next post. 1850. Q gives us this Fox link right here. West Virginia lawmakers move to impeach entire Supreme Court. God Dog. West Virginia's House Judiciary Committee moved to impeach the state's entire Supreme Court this week. The committee filed 14 articles of impeachment against the 4 judges on Tuesday, and they will now go to the full House of Delegates for a vote. The article alleges the justices, Chief Justice Margaret Workman and Justices Alan Lowry, Robin Davis, and Elizabeth Walker, have engaged in corruption, incompetency, neglect of duty, maladministration, and certain high crimes. The justices are also accused of wasteful spending of taxpayer funds on lavish office renovations, using public vehicles for personal matters, and creating a plan to pay certain senior judges more than is lawful, the committee said. Wow. Okay, so looks like some of them are going to start in early October, and they're facing quite a bit of fines. The whole Supreme Court is going away. And I think Q is making the point here that the swamp is not completely drained. Once one goes down, another one comes back. Just like in the previous post, we said some of these people are married. It's all in the family. And then Q goes on to give us this list here. And we've actually seen a lot of this list here. Q is just making a point. This is how deep this goes. And once this is all gone, imagine what we could start doing when we can get some fresh, new faces in here. Imagine that. All these people are guilty of something and aren't coming back. They're all resigning. Is that normal? I don't think so. I've never seen it in my life. And I guess that's why everyone is panicking so hard for these midterms, because they know that once these names all go away, it is going to be absolute devastation for the deep state. Let's move on. Post 1851, we're back with our buddy Bill Maher. And you can see a couple of his shows here. I'm Swiss, Real Time with Bill Maher, Be More Cynical, all part of Kid Love Productions. How about that? Kid Love Productions. Let's read what he has to say. But with Deborah LaFave screwing her 14-year-old boy student, the crime is that we didn't get it on videotape. Was he being taken advantage of? I wish I had been taken advantage of like that. What a memory she gave him. Nice, Bill Maher. Way to keep it classy. The worst they said Michael Jackson did was a little grabby under the covers. If I could go back and trade that experience being beat up at age 12 for being you-know-what by a pop star, I would do it in a New York second. Yikes. What a creep. She is in jail because she's in love. That's how I view it. Maher said this about a Seattle school teacher convicted of having sex with a 12-year-old student and getting pregnant by him. Yeah, good job, Bill Maher. You're on TV talking to people about what you think every day. Nice. Look, I get free speech, but you're a creep. Q says sometimes the truth is right in front of you, and takes us to this Breitbart link. And wouldn't you know it, photos surface of Guardians director James Gunn at pedophilia-themed party. And there's your homeboy right there, dressed up like a priest with a bunny and some kids and a clown who's choking a little girl. You know, this isn't terrible at all. And this Ian Miles Chung says, I wish I never defended James Gunn. The now disgraced Gunn was fired by Walt Disney Company last month after countless jokes about child rape were dug up on his Twitter account. The jokes were more than 5 years old and also mocked sensitive subjects such as AIDS, the Holocaust, Mexican, and you-know-what women. All right, so just more creepiness. And there you go. You can see it all in the picture there. I don't get it. I guess this is funny for some people. I don't know. I consider myself fairly familiar with decent humor, I guess. But maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm uptight. Maybe I guess I just don't get it. But I guess I don't think that raping kids is okay. I don't think anything about that's funny. Good job, James Gunn. Good job, Bill Maher. Look at me. Are you touching kids? If you're touching kids, we're going to find you. Don't be touching kids. Listen to me very clearly. If you're doing something wrong with the children, we're coming for you. Q says these people are sick. You people are a disease. We, the people, are the cure. Yeah, indeed. I'm about ready to deep six all of Hollywood. All of it. And in the next post here, 1852, we see this tweet from Bill Maher. OMG, what did Michelle Bachmann do to her hair? I thought I stumbled on an ad for Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Huh, that's funny. Feels like I've heard a tweet like that before. Same tweet that got Roseanne Barr kicked off of her own show, the one that made millions for ABC. Anon says, ha ha ha, that's why I added it there. The hypocrisy is unreal. And this Twitter link just takes you to his Twitter status where you see this tweet. So, good job, Bill Maher. Just another reason for us to like you. Let's move on. Post 1853, we see this right here to another Twitter link. And that takes you here. NBC showing people how to delete old tweets. Sending out a message, huh? And it takes you to this link where they basically are kind of highlighting the James Gunn situation, a couple baseball players, some of the issues that they've had. And now they're offering this third-party service called Tweet Delete. Real nice. So it sounds to me like they may be sending a message out to their buddies saying, look, clean it up, as people are coming after us. Who knows? Q says, do you believe in coincidences? Not anymore. Truth to power. Q. And then in post 1854, we get more classics from James Gunn. All these same tweets, and I'm not going to read them. I'll just let you look at them there. I read them before, and they're pretty nasty. And, you know, I don't know what else to say. This is just, I'm all about free speech, but this stuff is just flat out nasty. Don't know what else to say. The choice to know will be yours. And that takes you to this Twitter status right here. Satan on Twitter. Someone sacrificed a pizza or something. I'm getting bored of goats. All right, well, look, this is tasteless. You know, this is such a tough one for me because I am a true believer in free speech. But this is just turning into flat out ugliness. And the people that we're dealing with here, they're not just deep state knuckleheads. They're satanic. And trying to explain that to your average citizen is an incredibly daunting task. And yet they're just completely throwing it in our faces. And it's disgusting. And I think we're all over it. I think we're all ready to mobilize on it. I think we're all ready to start confronting these people. And the only thing that I know to do right now is to hit them in their pocketbooks. As far as I'm concerned, like I said, Hollywood can hop off a cliff. I'm sick of the music industry. I'm sick of Hollywood. I'm sick of the mainstream media. I'm sick of all these chuckleheads thinking that they can bend the media and do whatever they like, saying whatever they wish. It doesn't go down like that anymore. You got yourself some QAnon. And that is why everyone's trying to clown QAnon. Now think about this. This dumbass right here comes out with this piece earlier I showed you, talking about QAnon, how ridiculous it is. And look at the ridiculous things that he says. Well, of course, we see the irony in that, but his fans don't. So why would a guy that is so left-leaning care about QAnon? After all, if QAnon really was what he claimed it was, don't you think he'd be enjoying the show? Don't you think he would love the self-destruction of the Republican Party? Like he said, don't show up in November. But he knows very well, people that listen to QAnon, follow QAnon, we're paying attention. And we're the very first in line in November. And as soon as that happens, people like Bill Maher will no longer be able to walk the street. And Bill Maher knows it. James Gunn knows it. And it looks to me like all these deep state knuckleheads know it as well. And that's why they want war, because the alternative has already been lost. So feel good, ladies and gentlemen, because we are winning. It's ugly. It's hard to talk about, but it's so much fun to know that when all these names are gone, we can put new ones in their places. And we can get back to our Constitution. We can get back to our morality. We can get back to our townships and our neighborhoods and our families. And we have a chance to do this right. And that's why it's going to be so important for us all to vote. Those are your Q posts for today. Very, very long. A little bit too much Q, to be honest with you. Sorry I couldn't get into too much deeper digging in some of this, but this was just so much. But anyway, I hope that helped you, at least in your research. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you're new, please know that they're going to unclick you and uncheck you and unsubscribe you. So won't you please be a dear and do it again? I post pretty much every day, and if Q posts, I post. So there you go. I am also on Twitter at IPOT1776. That's at IPOT1776. I'm also on Gab, BitChute, and Real.Video. My Patreon is down below, and my PayPal has yet to be set up, but I'm working on it. And yeah, I think that's all I got for you. All right, kids, there's a lot of love for you here. This is Sir Patrick Mack, and until next time, stay free.